Okay. I should have blown my nose before. Anyhow.
Go for it. Go on, we can cut it.
All right, Fred, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on, man.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to come on these and chat about stuff that we love.
Absolutely. I mean, we are separated by, I kind of feel a little bit like brothers from another mother. We had a conversation before this, and we just went on and on and on about the passion about sales. So I'm excited to get your really your opinions and your perspective out to the world. So this will be fabulous. So first thing we got to do is we got to set the stage for everybody. Is Fred, how do you define sales?
This is interesting. And I knew you were going to ask me this. So I thought about it and I thought, well, luckily I've written a book about sales and I define it in there. And that's about 3 pages long because I go into sort of sales, going back to the world of bartering. And then I look at sort of different levels of value and complexity that we see now. So we go through classic sales, and there's a definition for that, and consultative sales, a definition for that, and value-based sales, and then another one for enterprise sales. And so I've got definitions coming out of my ears. And then I realized it's facilitating a fair exchange of value. That's it.
Boom.
I could have done it in a tweet. I didn't need 3 pages. Facilitating a fair exchange of value. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Well, yeah, let's unpack that a little bit. So facilitating a fair exchange of value. There's 3 words that pop out to me: facilitate, fair, and value. So let's talk about the facilitate. What do you mean when you talk about facilitating a fair exchange?
So, I mean, we're salespeople, aren't we? And that's kind of who I'm expecting is listening to this. So some sales just happen. And I guess there's a lot of online sales and stuff. And they probably don't even just happen either. There's a lot of marketing things going on. But I guess the kind of sales that we're getting involved with, it involves somebody who is making some kind of effort to help people understand things, getting other people involved to help broaden that understanding, to put ideas together to help deal with any problems or issues or challenges or opportunities that come out of that understanding. So that's what I mean by the facilitation piece. It's like some proactive stuff going on that's getting us to a point where we're going to get involved into that exchange.
And then fair, right? So this is a really big word for this program. I think like there's a perception in sales that we're looking to smash, right? So we're looking to smash sales as that schmarmy or always looking out for oneself type of perception. What do you mean by fair when you get into facilitating a fair exchange of value?
I mean, we often talk about win-win, don't we? Which makes sense. And so it's making sure that whatever we're doing is mutually beneficial. Both parties are coming out of that exchange of value, content, happy, satisfied with what that is. And it's quite interesting, I think, because sales has this reputation, doesn't it, that we're trying to screw the opposition. We're trying to do on someone. But do you know what I've found is that sometimes I don't think salespeople are looking after themselves enough. Some people are so customer focused, they're like sort of giving everything away that actually it's no longer win-win, it's lose-win. And that's not sustainable. Same as if you do try to stitch someone up, isn't sustainable either. So that's what I'm meaning by fair, in that it's sort of we're looking for win-win and that everyone's kind of happy, if you like, because it's emotional, isn't it? That what we've agreed to, we're all coming out of that well.
Let's drive into the last word there, value. So I've done a lot of these, and a lot of people define value in different ways, but I think for your definition to get it right, we need to look into what you're thinking there. What is value?
Well, when you say fair exchange of value, and one of the things that I usually talk about quite quickly, having brought value onto the table, is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So is value. Mm-hmm. We have to understand what it means to our customer. That's what value is. Or as a colleague of mine, Mike Wilkinson, says, it's a mystery. Value is a mystery. Our job is to kind of uncover that mystery, to solve the mystery of what they define value as. Okay, good. Now we can then start delivering on that. But we aren't doing that just for the good of mankind or because we're bored or just for the hell of it. We want something back for that. And as often as not, that's where we price. So that's value to us, that we've got some money that we can go and do something with. Whereas the customer that we've understood the value with are getting the outputs, getting the results, the things that they're trying to achieve, we're helping with that. Value both sides. That's fair. We've exchanged that. We're good.
I love that definition. I've never heard that before. Value is a mystery.
Oh,
And
Mike's a great guy, and he
yeah.
knows I've stolen this. I've nearly adopted it myself. I always try and credit him. But my own personal spin on it's a bit weird in that I think quite visually, and when I think of mystery, I think of the mystery machine in Scooby Doo.
Mm-hmm.
I always get that in my head, and like we're running around in this like Scooby Doo machine trying to work out, what's value. We know what it probably is. Yeah, it's usually the janitor, isn't it, in Scooby Doo? So we know what value probably is for our customers, but it's not right that we should tell them what it is. We've got to uncover it. We've got to solve the crime.
I'm thinking for some reason the picture just of Sherlock Holmes with a pipe, just sitting there kind of looking sideways and just asking the few, key questions that uncover actually what's happening.
And it's questions, isn't it? It's working out what it is in that context, in that instance, which is why it's such a genius. It's such a genius definition. So I borrow it.
No, it's a good borrow. And Mike, I'm going to have to borrow it too, because that's fantastic. Because it really forces us to think about. It forces us to think about how to sleuth, right? How to go about the idea of serving and leading with questions and understanding that value. So how did you get into sales? Like, how did you make this transition?
It's a bit of a weird story. So my first job was in sales.
Okay.
Yeah. I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Child labor.
Wait till you hear the story. It's not far off. So the family business was a builder's merchant here in the UK. Builder's merchants, we sold kitchens, bathrooms, heavy goods, tiles. And so every Christmas on Boxing Day is the day after Christmas in the UK, we had the annual sale, the big sale. When I was 8, I was allowed to go and help. Okay, so they kitted me out. They put me in this big orange polo shirt, because that was company uniform, but it's huge. It's an adult shirt, so it's all over me. A brown kind of warehouse coat. I don't know if you have those in the States. It's kind of this big sort of thing that people used to wear. Again, far too big for me. And they went and put me in the tile store to help people choose these tile elements to take them away. I need to explain that the premises was an old Victorian mill. Yeah, so you can picture an old Victorian mill in the UK, sort of big stone building. Mm-hmm. It's in December. It's literally stone cold. And so I'm there with a massive polo shirt, massive coat on, talking to people and helping them. I didn't know that was sales. But that's what sales is, if you think about it. And I was having the time of my life. I wasn't cold. I was just having a laugh. I earned my first commission as well. Yeah, except what I was doing is when they were picking these tiles, I was writing that out on this little piece of paper and putting my name on it. So in the end, they sort of humoured me by giving me like a little bonus at the end of the day, which I spent incredibly wisely, as you can imagine.
Yes, 8-year-old wisdom.
Yeah, can you imagine what I spent it on?
Well, you're about my Transformers, G.I. Joes.
No, not even that, sweeties. Candy.
Nice candy.
but no, I mean, look, that was the sort of the first exposure. I didn't know it was sales, but think about it. It was talking to people, it's helping them, it was having fun doing it, and I loved it. And so maybe because family business, always that kind of commercial element to it. I've always ended commercial stuff, so I had other jobs, a lot of jobs and stuff. Went to university, studied commerce and Spanish. Got a job then into sales, so straight out of uni into a sales job, into a marketing job, back into a sales job, and then ultimately into the kind of the consultancy role I'm in now. So it's always kind of been there or thereabouts, some kind of sales or commercial activity going on. Yeah,
you've had a great successful career in sales as well. Do you mind sharing a little bit about the later part of the journey? What type of selling did you focus on?
So when my first job, it was with an industrial company. So we sold pneumatics, pneumatic components, engineering essentially.
Yep.
Ideal for a commerce and Spanish graduate to go into. I didn't really understand the engineering bit, but I understood the people bit. And they needed me for some projects in Spain as well. So I was using language straight up from what I was doing. And yeah, so I was kind of reasonably successful in that. I traveled from kind of second week of the job. I was on a plane to Spain working there. And that's always been part and parcel of what I've done. I did okay. I never really fell in love with the product. I'm not an engineer at the end of the day. But I did like the sort of that commercial element, back to that, the sort of the export piece, the understanding people, the helping them plan stuff, put things together, which is why I was quite young to go into a training job. I went to some training myself, thought, hey, this looks good fun. Approached the training company, said I'd like to do this job. They said, come and speak to us. I thought, yay, I'm the man. I turned up. They said, you're totally unsuitable for what it is you think you could do, which kind of shattered my dreams straight away. But they did say, your timing is quite amazing, because we're about to put a job out where we want someone of exactly your profile. We have this course, the Essentials to Success, it was called, the basic sales skills course, which we want someone who's closer to the profile of the participants to run it. And it's a full-time sales trainer job, so we want you to come in and to do that if you find that interesting. And so yeah, that's what I did. So I was a full-time trainer for a training company, which is quite odd now because they tend to use associates. And so I did that. We ran that twice a month, whole bunch of people, 3-day residential course. Oh, it's brilliant, laugh, really cool.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's one of my favorite things in the world to do. It's so much fun.
Twice a month. And then there was another course which followed on from that, which is once a month. So like 3 days every month, I knew what I was doing. It was good fun. I mean, it was great. In the end, what I did though is said, look, I want to move more into doing the in-company stuff, which is so going and working on specific company projects. So where we work out, kind of the training they needed, how we build that, how we deliver it. And long story short, we did some work with a client which sold Mexican beer. So it's a group for Cermex, Euro Cermex, part of Group Modelo. Mm-hmm. We did a conference, a couple of things for them. We said to them, you should have a sales academy. They said, yeah, we'd love to. And then contacted me and said, could I come and do it for them? Put me in a tricky situation. So I said to the training company, I said, look, that's what they've asked me. The MD said, what do you want to do? I said, let me think about it for a moment. Fly around the world helping people to sell beer. About a millisecond later, I said, I'd like to go with those guys. He goes, thank you. Thanks for coming and approaching us. It's the right thing to do. Go with that blessing. What's the deal look like? I said, well, actually, it's to set up for myself to then kind of contract for them with a guaranteed number of days and stuff. And he said, so can you come back and work for us as well?
Oh, really?
That's
awesome.
Having your cake and eating it. I mean, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was pretty cool. It was people talk about, the struggles of getting into freelance to set up your own business. Mm-hmm. In that instance, it was dead easy. I was utterly spoiled. It got tougher later on down the line. I could tell you some horror stories later on, but from setting up the sort of whole Brindis 17 years ago, that was kind of how I did it. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, you're looking out for them. You're looking out for you. That's a perfect. It doesn't always end that way, but that's awesome. That chapter ended to start Brindis. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I carried on working with the guys I was working with before. So it was it was nice. It was nice. And then that's 17 years ago. So a load of travel with Euro Cermex, as you can imagine, because I was literally going around the world running training courses for them. Mm-hmm. And since then, I mean, I don't do that anymore. The structure's all changed. But I still travel since then. So yeah, about 50% of my time was away. So
how many countries have you been to?
So 36 countries.
Holy mackerel!
In the last 22 years. Yeah.
Wow. Drinking beer at every stop.
Well, it was part of the job at one stage, wasn't it? I had to. Less so now. I find it's a complete change now because completely remodeled how I deliver training and the way in which we can kind of get people the outcomes they look for. But at the time when I was traveling around, it was brilliant. I've been to places that I probably would have been before. I've worked with people that wouldn't necessarily, got really insights into how people work in different countries, and massive insights into salespeople, and the challenges they have. So yeah, it set me up to sort of do what I do even better, because I've got that level of understanding.
Let's talk a little bit about then. You travel the world, you get to meet a million people, and you decide to write a book, and then that book becomes two. So, what are the core things that you were trying to communicate in the first book, and then how did that translate into book number two?
Yeah, so the first book, as I said, I've sort of been around and I've seen the challenges that many salespeople have. I wish I got paid for people who said it's different in my industry.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be a millionaire. But when you look, you can broadly distill stuff down into three main challenges. So I'd sort of worked out what these were, worked out the way in which we need to deal with those across the board. And I'd come across this concept of PQ. So PQ, is the lesser known cousin of IQ and EQ. It's partnering skills. Because if we think like a partner, that will help us solve a lot of the challenges that we've got in sales today. It just changes the whole way in which we operate. Rather than trying to sell to somebody, you sell with them, you collaborate. And so the point that I make a lot is that consultative selling isn't enough anymore. And that winds some people up. But I say, look, it's a good, excellent basis, that's a foundation, but we need to move it up through value-based selling and into a more collaborative approach. And so bringing PQ into the way we operate, that's what will help us make that transition into a modern way of working. So that's why that book, Selling Through Partnering Skills, probably could have called it collaborative selling, but I wanted to kind of stay true to these partnering skills I think we need to bake into the way we operate. If we're not, how can we really kind of have that customer's best interest at heart? So that's why I wrote that first one, 2020. That was going to be me, like a band makes the album. So was it for 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, 2020, we know what happened then as well.
What happened?
God, little sort of bug went around the world.
Yeah.
Well, and that had a massive effect. This is a serious thing, really. And what I saw is that actually it wasn't making what I was saying any less important. In fact, it's probably making it more important, because we need to work with customers more than ever before. But then some of the changes that salespeople were having to face because the way that customers were experiencing change, that needed to be addressed as well. And I think, as I said to you last time, I sat and watched Tiger King, same as everyone else. I'm getting bored with watching Netflix. I thought, you know what? Let's do something a little bit more useful. Let's put something together which can talk about what the challenges that we're now experiencing that we were going to but have landed on us here and now, and then some which are going to come down the line are going to come down faster as well. So that's why I wrote Hybrid Selling, to sort of sit alongside the first book and to give people a really modern approach to thinking, well, how can we future-proof ourselves by making sure we're doing stuff that customers like, that's relevant for them, and just doing it in a really good way. So
let's hop back to the first one. Let's hop to PQ.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the concept, and I'm fascinated by how to leverage it. So it seems like, well, just tell me a little bit more about it. Let's dive into this concept of PQ.
Yeah, so I didn't invent PQ. PQ was developed through research and then validation verification in the late 80s, early 90s, probably about the same time that Goldman was doing the EQ stuff, which is probably better known, by a guy called Steve Dent. And what he was doing is he was kind of working with these big corporations. When the alliances were quite big, I think the airways, when they were all coming together, the airlines, he was working with them, and they're saying, hey, how can we do this stuff more effectively? So he went and studied this stuff. And cut a long story short, he's come back to them and said, well, that organizations don't partner, people do. It's people skills you need to work on. Oh, well, what are these people skills? Well, this is the stuff that I've modeled out of seeing the very best partnerships. Here are these 6 elements which we can understand, we can measure, and we can develop. And so if you have people who are good at this stuff, then you'll get better alliances. The 6 elements are, first is trust. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? You know, foundation for relationships, foundation for communication. We need to bring trust into the way that we work. And I'm looking at all these as we're going through and going, well, yeah, any salesperson should be looking at that, shouldn't they? You don't just need to be in partnerships. Sales, full stop. If you haven't got trust, then, you know. Second one, win-win, win-win focus. Yeah, we just talked about that. So again, you know, we need to build that into the way that we look, both make sure the customer is satisfied and that we're getting fair deal as well. Next element was comfort with interdependence. Interdependence, not independence, not rushing off doing the lone wolf thing. You know, it's about, the way I explain to people this is, well, two things. One, it's a team sport. So you've got your team that you need to bring into more complex and sophisticated sales, and you've got the customers team, decision-making unit, and we need to kind of match people up in that. But if we can get into our heads that our customer's success is our success, that is the best way, I think, to describe interdependence. Yeah, I want to drive your success and then I'll be good for it. Bring that into the way we play. Again, every salesperson should have that. We then think about, and the word I use for this now is transparency. We need to be transparent. Steve Dent talked about self-disclosure and feedback. So self-disclosure, giving some information about yourself. But don't expect the customer to be a mind reader. If something isn't right for you, if it isn't a win for you, if it's something that kind of not really working, we have to say so. Equally, if they're not doing what they've said, that's when we need to give them feedback about what they're doing. Because sometimes it's in a blind spot, isn't it? And people just don't know. So having that kind of grown-up conversation, for want of a better word, being transparent, being open and honest, again, a better way in which we can all sell. Comfort with change is the fifth. We're change agents. We sell change. We want people to do things differently, do different things. Now, we've got to be comfortable with that. Because if not, what right have we got to speak to people about doing stuff different in their world? And if we don't really understand change, we don't know how to speak to people about it. So, you know, it can be quite, when we're selling change, I'm selling training, you're selling CRM, and we get really excited about the impacts this can have on people, and we'll get really animated and talk about all this wonderful stuff that they're going to get from it. Do you know if that's brand new to somebody? They're going through the change curve that we all go through, and they're probably shocked or angry or trying to make sense of it, bargaining. You know, it's like grief, it's like the grief curve. So we can mismatch our communication so badly if we're not careful. So recognize where people are in that change, how they respond to it, and adapt our communication effectively for it. And of course, challenge status quo, because we know that's where most deals are lost. So that's well, they're all biggies and they all operate together. So yeah, another thing we need to bring into every single sale. And the last element is having future orientation. So again, rather than always making decisions looking backwards, and this didn't work in the past, and that's not how we used to do things, and that's, you know, it's like, well, where are we headed? What are we trying to achieve? What does that look like? What's the vision? What's the goal? How can we get there? What are those steps? Let's move towards that together. And so if we bring all of these elements together, this is why, for me, PQ, right at the core of good modern selling, sets us up to be way more effective, working in a way which is just better for customers. And of course, better for us then, because we're interdependent.
So the book, for those of you that don't look below and see the link, it is Selling Through Partner Skills. I'm just going to repeat these because I think it's really, I know a lot of people have told me they take notes, so I'm just trying to help them with that. But there's 6, right? EQ. Let's see if I got them right. Number 1 is trust, or not EQ, PQ, right? Trust. Yes. Win-win, interdependence, transparency, which is also self-disclosure and feedback. Essentially, your word. I like your word on that more. I think it's more effective. Comfort with change and having a future orientation.
Yep.
So how do you help? Like, how then do you go into an organization and that is ripe for selling this way? I mean, there's so many that could be really ripe for selling this way, but they still are getting on the phone and trying to pitch and make one call closes, and they're not having that success. How do you go in then and understand the elements of PQ within their business and train to it?
Yeah, well, so there's something else first. So there's the PQ on one hand, and then on the other hand, what I did is I looked at kind of how sales has developed, how it's kind of evolved over time. You know, and sales has evolved. There's a lot of time and effort put into understanding how to sell well. Right? It's a big industry. Sales training is a huge industry, and lots of stuff there to help people do it better. And you can kind of look at these trends that went through from the sort of 50s through 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And I sort of look at all those and I these things and go, right, okay, a lot of that stuff's still relevant, but it just needs a bit of a modern shift, a bit of a modern tweak. Some of the stuff is horrible and we should throw it away because it's not helpful in the slightest, mainly from the 80s. Bit it. Blows. Oh, whatever. Then
ABC.
Yeah, always be collaborating. Can we change it into?
I like that. There you go.
But there are things which are still useful. 50s. What we do, process. That's what it looked at then. Okay, yeah, we want to use process. We want to use good, solid ways of working. 60s, understanding psychology, understanding how people think. Well, yeah, absolutely. We want to do that, and we want to use some of the modern tools to help us do it even quicker. Yeah, we can understand someone's personality style before we've even met them now. That still makes my brain hurt. Using like Humantic AI or Crystal knows crazy. 70s, benefit selling. Yes, solid basis, but let's be careful because the shift we need to make is to not go on and on and on and on about product. Think more about the problem the product's solving or the insights that we can give to help people think. Come back to that. 80s. Like I say, yeah, ABC and all that sort of stuff, objection handling. But sales is still about a series of advancements. So again, how can we do that? But how can we do it more elegantly? Understanding, how conversation intelligence. We can listen to the stuff that works. We know how the brain works. We know neuroscience. We've got more information than ever to understand, how decisions are made. 90s, consultative selling. I've said it already. It's a good, solid basis. That questioning model. Asking good questions to help people establish that, there is a need. Through impact, through implication, through pain, if you have to call it that. But I think that's a little bit jaded. The concept I get, but we've got to be careful with it now. Value-based selling, it's mystery. Okay, how do we unpick the mystery? There's ways and means for us to do that. Noughties, it was value. 10s, I talked about sales stature because I hadn't got another word for it. And this was about projecting the right image, the right kind of reputation, if you like, that you're the go-to person that somebody would want to work with.
Challenger, because Challenger was one of the biggest books of that time. So that makes a whole lot of sense. Okay.
Yeah, but it also when social media was really starting to kick off. So now we would call that personal branding. Yeah. But again, using that to say, hey, look, I am the person that you want to be speaking to. And then in the 20s, collaboration, so using PQ. So we can look at all these things, pick out the bits we want, take the PQ bits, and then we kind of bring them together. And so that's the framework that I talk about in the book, the value framework, which again, value in this case is an acronym: validate, align, leverage, underpin, evolve. That is how you can hang around your sales activity to make sure that what you're doing is conducive to what customers want, you're up to date, and you're using all the stuff that works for you. And the good thing is I'm agnostic. So if there's something I see out there that I like, we'll pull that in. Challenge it. Yeah, that has its place. Get it in there. Yeah. So does spin. So does decision-making unit mapping. So does so many bits, which actually there's some really good stuff. Let's not, in English, we say throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can do that. So having that framework, that's what I can then use with companies to help them kind of map or judge themselves against that, if you like. And I could give a link to a scorecard where people can start to have a bit of think about that. And then construct training around that where we can make sure that we're giving information to people, which is what training does, but it's all about the implementation. And that's what I've done over the last couple of years, is to really make sure that the training I deliver, or Brindis delivers, is about implementation. Taking the stuff, using the stuff to get the results. Otherwise, it's just knowing stuff for the sake of it. So, which is nice, but it's not going to get you the results you want.
It doesn't get you that far. I had a good friend of mine the other day. She posted on LinkedIn. She's like, it was a little rant against the tips and tricks trainers, which come and they'll show up and they'll give like 3 to 4 tips and tricks, and that's your training for the day and leave. And 5% of those tips and tricks are ever used, so they still become this mysterious tip and trick. They're a great one-liner that never gets actually executed. So there, your focus on that implementation is massive, and especially around collaboration, right? I heard if today is if the 20s, if you're defining the 20s as the kind of the collaboration and sales, the partnership era, I had a chance to talk to. I'm just connecting some dots right now. I had a chance to talk with Matt Dixon, one of the authors of the Jolt Effect. But that's truly, if I really look at that book through your lens relative to collaboration, it's being able to guide them and help with that indecision that actually truly that is collaborative. That has to be collaborative. They have to know and understand that the indecision is present and guiding them through that process. There's not a better word to describe it, I think, than partnership or collaboration. So that's fascinating. And thank you for that travel through time. That's a brilliant, that is absolutely brilliant.
That's my short version. We could still be sat here stuck in the 60s if you weren't careful. If I was, if I wasn't being disciplined.
I think we'll stay in the 20s. We'll stay now. So we're going to give a link to this scorecard. Can you describe this for everybody? Because we'll make sure people get their chance to get their hands on it and score themselves.
Yeah, no. So it's 35 questions, I think, is in it. I can't remember any questions. It's about that. It takes about 5 minutes to do. Probably shouldn't overthink it. Just answer the questions deliberately, yes or no. We'll see one way or the other. Which then is going to measure you on PQ on each of the elements of the value framework. There's another little test in there as to your kind of values, which is probably a little bit selfish for me because I want to work with people that I know I can have most impact with. But no,
that's not selfish. That's just business, right? That's collaboration.
We get fascinated with demographics and psychographics, but actually where we can really connect with people is on a values level. So if we can understand what their values are, and there's just a couple of 3 questions in there, because I know if people are kind of quite creative, if they're quite adventurous, and if they're comfortable enough using technology to create connection, then we're going to have massive impact. And then I borrowed that stuff from David Allison. He's the value graphics guy. He's done huge amounts of research on that. I've just butchered his archetypes on there because they're a little bit more elegant than that. But for me, I just think of them as cats. I told him this when I interviewed him myself, and he's like, yeah, I suppose so. At least you're using them, Fred. But yeah, creative, adventurous.
Thanks, but no thanks.
But it was one of those. At least you're using it, but please don't be my ambassador too much more.
No, that's great.
But it is, and that's where you really connect. So, that's the scorecard. Bunch of quick questions. What it'll do is it'll then give you a report based on each of those elements. So how you score on the PQ, how you score on the value framework, whether you're sort of high, medium, or low. It'll then kind of give you some ideas and what you can do about that. So it produces quite a big report off the back of it with a bit of an explanation of kind of where it's come from and the rest of it. So it's I think the PDF's about 20-25 pages or something off the back, but it's tailored because with the dynamic content off the back to give you a real kind of insight into it. And there's a few little freebies off the back of it too.
Oh, we like freebies. We like giving out freebies here. That's good.
As long
as you're getting some value out of it.
It's fair exchange, I think. Yeah, because it's helping people to think this is the way in which we want sales to be. So,
well, and where do people find you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it your website? What's the best ways to find you?
LinkedIn is the best. Yeah, LinkedIn is the best. Connect with me. Mention the podcast. Please do that. And what it is that particularly I said or we said that made you want to connect. And I can if there's any specific question, ask that. I can point you towards something a bit more specific around that. Yeah.
I would love to have a follow-on conversation. You just mentioned LinkedIn. I'd love to have a follow-on conversation relative to LinkedIn and partner-based selling, all the way from prospecting to prospecting to the end game and account growth. Because I think there's such a good potential leverage for that. I love the network effect that LinkedIn can have, but I just think it gets misused and abused so many times that a lot of people are unfortunately, they're tuning out the direct messages. So I'd love to have you for a follow-on discussion around something like that. If that's not it, but I think that would be fascinating.
I have some ideas around that and probably be able to say more in a few weeks, few months time. So yeah, let's do it.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, stuff
Let's make
bubbling
it happen.
under.
Well, Fred, thank you so much for being on the Art and Science of Complex Sales today. This has been a fascinating interview. It's absolutely packed. I'll make sure that I put down notes for everybody, so you can review, and when I do the LinkedIn post, so you can review the notes as well as listening to everything. And any last words of wisdom to the sellers out there?
I guess it's how I sometimes describe myself. If I've got 10 seconds and what I'm all about in sales, I just hope people can be this too, which is about having good people doing good things in a good way. That's what I'll talk to. That's how we should be. And yeah, if we can all do that, makes sales a better thing, doesn't it?
I'm in. Let's make it happen. Thanks so much, Fred. We'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure.